protest was lodged with the stewards for a bump 50 yards from the post. The next half hour was a nightmare. I bit my nails down to the quick. I thought I would never be over. I felt hot, I felt cold, I felt sick. The siren was once again sounding. The announcer came over, stand by. The whole of the racecourse was silent. I let out my breath with a sigh. Your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen. The words seemed to float through a mist. Your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen. The protest has been dismissed. Well, you could hardly imagine my feelings. The torture I'd suffered was through. I'd buy a big mansion in Turek. There were so many things I could do. Then I suddenly felt I was drowning. I let out a horrible scream, for I'd fallen to sleep in the bathtub, and the whole thing was only a dream. Well done, Mr. Collins. Now, in conclusion, I would like to tell you about what happened to me just recently. I went in to see Bill in the hospital, and he said, Shirl, I've been thinking. I mean, the man is lying there very, very sick in bed. Shirl, I've been thinking something that you should do. I said, what's that, Bill? He said, I think you should buy yourself a greyhound. A greyhound? He said, yes, I'd like you to get involved with the greyhound racing. And I thought, all right. So I said goodbye, but whilst I was going down to my car, I could think of nothing else, but here he is lying so sick, and he wants me to buy a greyhound. Nevertheless, I think I will, Bill, and we may call it Sunny Side Up. In conclusion now, I've got to say that Bill, to me, was a great race caller, a great entertainer, but most of all, a great man and a thorough gentleman. I love you, Bill, and I'll never forget you. Thank you.
We're going to have a special table in here in the program next week, a blackjack table. We're going to have a blackjack shoe.
You're not allowed to do that. It's against the gaming rules.
Not if you don't play for money.
Well, there was much more to Bill's life than being in the limelight. Henry Harrison knows all about that. Bill never said no to a charity, a good cause, or just someone down on their luck. But perhaps Bill's proudest achievement is the Echo Foundation, which he founded and was president of for 18 years. Henry Harrison is the patron of Echo and a good mate of Bill's.
My association with Bill goes back to 1956, from the time when the late John Cade gave licences to non-proprietary greyhound racing. Bill Collins became part of it. There was many, many factors that Bill was covering, but one that nobody did hear very much about was his concern for elderly citizens. In the early 70s, there was a family in South Melbourne, Albert Park, the O'Hanlons. Jack O'Hanlon was a bookmaker who had a heart of gold. He was one of the very few people who really started to use, in a constructive way, the bingo. And he started working for the Catholic Church in South Melbourne, and they had bingo once or twice a week, and it went on from there. But he had also a great affinity with Bill Collins. Jack O'Hanlon took to Bill a proposal that they do something for the elderly citizens who used to attend all these bingo sessions. And so was this ECHO, which stands for Elderly Citizens Elderly Citizens Holiday Organisation. He took it to Bill Collins, and Bill Collins said, right, we've got to get some money to get it going. And he in turn took it to Sir John Dillon, who in turn took it to Henry Harrison, who was the president chairman of the Thoroughbred Club of Australia and also Sandown Grade Racing Club. He had a lot of people who he could call on to also start to run functions to raise money. Bill Collins had the ability to do things that you weren't allowed to do. That was his main forte. I remember well him saying to Sir John Dillon, "We'll run a Calcutta." Bill Collins said, "You can't, it's illegal." He said, "Oh, we'll get round it." They did, they run it. And Sir John Dillon couldn't go because he was frightened to get caught. Not only that, he used to, in his own way, run various types of organisations, raffles, all that you could do, but he had that ability, A, to raise money, and they raised money. And they bought a property down at Rye. They also got the likes of Gabby Farrer. I could name dozens and dozens and dozens of people who, charity-minded, put in to make this thing go. I would think that if you was to take all of the functions, all of the organisations, all of the associations that Bill Collins run, you'd have to say, where does he get the time? I'm just surprised that Robert ever saw him, because he was always doing something for somebody. He was an absolute magician right at the moment. I've got no doubt he's organising something. He's looking down at us down here, and he's saying, "Well, I bet you'll be in trouble. I'll get you out of it." There's no problems with that. All I could say is that this particular organisation, the Echo Foundation, now is in the hands of a committee that will no doubt at all carry on where Bill has had to let go. God bless you, Bill.
The night when whole lifetimes of plans, of sweat and of dreams suddenly are called to the barrier to face their moment of truth. Inter Dominion Grand Final night. It is the night of glory.
Claude Morrell knew Bill as a top-line sportsman. Claude is president of the Melbourne Bowling Club, and Bill loved his bowls. Not only that, he could really play. He was something to bet on, in fact, and I'm sure Bill did on a few occasions, Claude.
That's quite correct, Gary. I stand here as a friend of Bill's, I think, for 40 years. A lot closer over the last 7 or 8 when he took up bowls. Bill's always regretted that he didn't do the same thing 25, 30 years ago. He really took to it like a duck takes to water. He loved the bowls. He loved the enjoyment of playing, the sportsmanship. He was a great team man. In fact, I go back, I was chairman of selectors, I think 3 years ago. He came up apologising and said, "Oh, Lord, I can't play Derby Day. I've got to go to the Derby. I don't want to. I don't want to let the team down. But the VRC have asked me to come along as a special guest." He was so apologetic. He was more worried about leaving his teammates in the lurch than going to the Derby. And he missed his first one 2 years before that. I think for something like 41 years he'd consecutively gone to the Derby. But bowls took over Bill's life, which people here wouldn't realise over the last 4 or 5 years. As Mr Harrison said, I don't think Robert ever saw him beforehand, but when he took over bowls, he's even worse. Bill thoroughly enjoyed the game, and he put a lot into it. We were in trouble at our club 2 years ago. We wanted some good driving force. Bill stood up, became president of our club and chairman of the board, and he put his heart and soul into that until his illness arrived last year. And even early this year, he came back in and helped a lot in what we're striving to do. The boys in bowls have really appreciated having him part of the bowling fraternity. As I said, it's a very short time. He wished he had law. The boys who go interstate with us in the Turf Carnival are going to miss he and Robin next year. I don't know if Robin might join us and come along. It's a great carnival, but Bill enjoyed it, and all the people interstate enjoyed his company. He was just Bill Collins, not broadcaster, not anything else, just Bill Collins bowler when he got on these trips. He was a fantastic man. And for the boys, when they bowling fraternity, particularly the Victorian Club bowlers, and Melbourne Club particularly, we say fond farewell, Bill. You'll be greatly missed, particularly by Harry MacDonald, who was his mentor, player, partner, and everything they did so much together. There's a great bonding between those two. And myself particularly, it's been a privilege and an honour, Bill, to have been a friend of yours over all these years. And enjoy yourself in that big green on the sky. Thank you.
I can remember Melbourne winning the game very, very easily. The highlights are a bit obscure to me now, but, well, it was nice to think that I was the first to do a televised football match.
And that was your last match?
That was my last as well.
Bobby Skilton, a hero and legend, is a triple Brownlow medalist for Bill's beloved Bloods, or Swans as we now know them better. Bill was South Melbourne through and through. And he didn't just support them. When they hit a hurdle in 1981 as chairman, he led them through some difficult times. Bill and Bob really loved the red and white.
Robin, family, one could not but agree with everything that everyone has said about Bill Collins. He truly was one of nature's gentlemen. He carried that same warmth and affection into the love of his football club, South Melbourne. Red and white were Bill's football colours. In World of Sport days, football was just played on Saturdays. Bill, of course, was at the racetrack. Whoever from South Melbourne went to the World of Sport on the Sunday would be buttonholed by Bill, taken into the corner, and the game dissected. Everyone looked at, Bill knew exactly and wanted to know just what was going on. It mattered not whether we had won or whether we had lost. If we had lost, if we were down, there was always the words of encouragement. After a win, it was a simple, well done. It was in the early 80s, though, when Bill showed his true colours. Debt-ridden, the club may well have folded, or as it turned out, gone to Sydney. Whatever it was, the club was split right down the middle. There was the Keep South at South faction, there was the Move to Sydney faction. Similar to the recent merger talks of football clubs, great friends look like becoming bitter enemies. There is no right or wrong in those situations, as both sides believe they're doing the right thing for the club they love. The fact was, though, that red and white people were fighting with red and white people. That hurt Bill Collins and hurt him deeply. Rather than see that happen, or maybe should I say, see it continue, Bill stepped into the breach. He became the last president in Melbourne, the first president in Sydney. Always one to give his heart, his soul, his time, his energy. Bill became the mediator. Without Bill, things may well have fallen apart. Through it all, he maintained both his dignity and his independence. He may not have wanted the club to go to Sydney, but seeing the side last year, playing well right throughout, culminating in a grand final performance, I'm sure, I know, made Bill one very happy person. Delighted that the red and white were both won and successful, the knowledge that there may have been no red and white had it not been for the part that Bill had played when the crisis was really on. It was a pleasure to know Bill, a privilege to be his friend. As much as he loved the red and white, we too loved him.
The first Melbourne Cup in '54 was won by Rising Fast, who took off he scooped the pool that year, incidentally, won the Caulfield Cup, Cox Plate and the Melbourne Cup. No, I didn't think, I didn't ever really expect to do it. I just hoped, and to think this year, you know, it's the 34th, it just doesn't seem 34 years ago.
David Burke is chairman of the Victoria Racing Club and knew Bill for 40 years. This morning, David speaks to us on behalf of all codes of racing and lovers of racing.
I'm pleased to pay this tribute to the late Bill Collins on behalf of the racing industry. Not only was Bill a remarkable man, a great broadcaster and entertainer, he was a most capable sporting administrator. His contribution to the racing industry was enormous. He figured in all sections: thoroughbred racing, harness racing, greyhound racing, or as probably Bill would more properly call it, gallops, trots and dogs. He certainly established a record that would never be equalled, being on harness and greyhound racing boards, as well as making a great contribution to the industry through his membership of the Totalisator Agency Board before it being privatised, and through his membership of the board of our racing industry radio station, 3UZ and now Sport 927. Last year he received the Chester Manifold Award, a most prestigious honour awarded by the chairman of the Thoroughbred Racing Code to the person who has made a great contribution to racing. I know Bill was very thrilled to be honoured in this way, as only a few such awards have been made in recent years. I think one of Bill's great qualities was his humility. He never pushed himself into the limelight, though he was entitled to do so. He preferred to work behind the scenes to obtain his objectives. He was an inspiration to us all, and never once did he complain. The racing industry is all the poorer for his passing, and we extend deepest sympathy to Robin and members of the family. Thank you.
Crowd running on. Bone Crusher responds to the whip. The roars of the crowd. He races up to our Waverley Star. 100 out. Bone Crusher, our Waverley Star. Stride for stride. Nothing in it. Our Waverley Star, the rails. Bone Crusher, the outside. And Bone Crusher races into equine immortality.
Brian Martin is probably the luckiest race caller ever born. Brian worked for many of his formative years at 3UZ under the great Bert Bryant, and later at 3DB under Bill. Bill was the patriarch, the mentor, the idol and friend to so many young race callers. Today, the #1 caller at Sport 927, Brian speaks to us on behalf of a fraternity, but Bill Collins was the #1. The race callers, and of course, the racing media.
Thank you, Gary. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1937, Bill Collins, then 9 years of age, hid in a tree to avoid going to the dentist. The reason was simply this: he wanted to hear the Melbourne Cup. Jim Carroll from the ABC delivered the call with one great line: "The trump is finishing like a shot out of a gun." Bill Collins, for 35 years, gave us the perfect line year in and year out. Bill was the tutor, the advisor, the father figure to so many from our profession. Everyone was equal. Bill Collins was never the opposition. Bill's advice was special. He would say to us to imagine that we were calling to a blind person. Always try and paint the picture in a race call. That we try. Bill did it so superbly. He, like those before him, mastered the public address. And how many times did we hear at Caulfield, hear Bill Collins say, "Your attention please, ladies and gentlemen." Everything stopped and you knew something serious was about to be announced. Now, many was the time that I'd see Bill run into the broadcast box alongside me when working for 3UZ. He'd be puffing, probably stubbing out a Willem too, take off his coat and his hat, and he'd learn the colours in 3 minutes and get the call perfect. He was amazing. Bill called the Melbourne Cup in 1954, won by Rising Fast, as well as he called the last of 34, won by Kenzai and Larry Olsen in 1987. He never missed a beat. The Collins era has been so special for us, particularly the race callers here in Australia. Bill has created the benchmark to which we all now aspire. The work on the racetrack of Bill Collins was admired all around the world. For over 4 decades, Bill kept pace with radio, the advent of black and white television, the arrival of colour. He called the codes with, that's all 3 codes, with enormous flair and with energy. His input to race broadcasting over 40 years is impossible to measure. He was simply the best. Our profession is so much richer for his presence. Rest in peace, Accurate One.
You know, I always compare the Australian Cup to the W.S. Cox Plate in the galloping world. I don't think any poor performer has ever won the race.
Les Carline knew Bill for more than 30 years. Bill's unique style of race broadcasting added inspiration to many of the brilliant newspaper features that Les has written. Les always believed that Bill's talent was not just his ability to accurately describe a race, it was much more. It was something special.
Robin and family, I first met Bill more than 30 years ago, and I didn't have as much to do with him as some here today, but I think I knew him well enough to know he'd be a touch confused by this quite astonishing and wonderful scene here today at what, after all, was his favourite racecourse. I can see him heading for the broadcasting box, balancing that cup of tea and 2 biscuits on a saucer. And I can see him pause, and I can see those bright lights go on in his eyes. And I can hear him say in that world-weary voice of his, "Beats me what they're trying to do here today. A grandstand full of people, freezing cold, and not a tote window open anywhere." Bill liked to bet. But I guess what we're trying to do here today is remember the things that truly matter. And one of these is that Bill is special to us because, above all, he was good at his craft. So good as to be peerless. So good as to transcend racing itself. So good he took racing to all the people. Maybe they didn't know the difference between a false favourite and a running double, but they knew who Bill Collins was, and they knew he was good to listen to. I remind you of just one race, Bone Crusher and Waverley Star in the Cox Plate. Now that race got a going over again quite recently for its 10th anniversary, but given a decade to think about it, no one came up with better words then than Bill produced on the day and in a split second. Race callers have no scripts, no auto cues, no leisurely deadlines. Just a split second to find 5 or 6 words that are just right. And you can't listen to that call of Bill's without feeling a chill. You can't but wonder how someone could reel off so effortlessly what amounted to instant literature. Think of the clarity of his voice that day. Think of those rich images he painted for us, how his voice rose with every shift in that battle, and how he made race calling just seem like some happy accident, and how, in a divine instant, his voice exhausted, he produced that line, and Bone Crusher races into equine immortality. Immortality. And of course he didn't just do it that day, he did it here, he did it everywhere. Bill was unique, not just in Melbourne, not just in Australia, but in the world. He captured the moment, then he went and had a cup of tea. Someone once said we only die when we fail to take root in others. Those of us who love sport will always hear Bill calling races in our minds. And if that's true, then yes, he too is immortal. Thank you.
Les Carline, and what a beautiful celebration. This has been a wonderful moment for Bill's family, Robin and the children here today, and we reflect back, and I said at the beginning of the program how Bill had touched every race call I'd ever spoken to, and so many different areas of television and radio. When I was a young boy growing up in Adelaide, when I was asked when I was going to school what I wanted to be, it wasn't just a race caller, I wanted to be Bill Collins. As an 11-year-old, I wrote to him from Adelaide and said, "Dear Mr. Collins, how do I become a race caller? I want to call a Melbourne Cup just like you." Bill wrote back to me, and for the rest of my life, I guess, as a broadcaster, I've been trying to emulate Bill Collins like every one of us have been trying to do, but there was only one of his. His calls, we talked about Bone Crusher a moment ago in 1986 with Waverley Star. I was calling in the box alongside of him that day. And also about 3 months later in the Australian Cup, when Bone Crusher got up to beat At Talak, I thought I'd done a pretty good call. I got the photo wrong. Bill, as always, got it just right. I think those two calls and many of those other famous ones will be with us forever. He meant so much to us at Channel 7. He's a legend at HSV. He could ad-lib like nobody else, and he was just a great guy who wasn't intimidated by anything and was prepared to give so much of himself to so many of us. We're going to miss him, but I think we've given him a great farewell today, and I hope you've enjoyed it here on Channel 7 from Caulfield. As we said a moment ago, this was his famous racecourse, perhaps his favourite one. He left us with so many terrific memories. Goodbye from Caulfield.